Ahoy, everyone! Wyatt Claypool here, back on the whiteboard today to give you what should be the last Calgary polling update before the election on the 20th. This election is bound to have a Hollywood finish because this last poll we are going to go over is super, super tight. We have been covering this race since back when Sonya Sharp, who I am supporting, was in fourth place in the polls, but through putting together what has been a very competent campaign and being the obviously more conservative candidate in the race, she has been moving up the ranks and now is in striking distance of winning the whole thing. Naturally, I think she has the advantage in this because she is running with a party rather than her main opponent, Jeromy Farkas, just running as an independent. But we will see how things play out. But before we get into the exact details, of course, I'm going to plug that if you don't have a Sonya Sharp sign yet and you live in the city of Calgary, and goodness, you actually want a conservative to be the mayor for once, make sure to go in the description below and click the link to go get a sign for Sonya Sharp. And then also, I will link in my endorsement list for the entire Calgary election. I think there's only a couple of positions that I've left out. There's one public school board, like dual ward that I don't have someone for. School board trustees run in two wards at a time, which sounds absolutely nightmarish. So I'm missing one public school board trustee, and then I only had two Catholic school board trustees I've endorsed. Naturally, it's really difficult to get information on every small race that's going on around the city. And then I also have endorsements for Airdrie, Edmonton, Cochrane, Red Deer, Medicine Hat, and I think I already said Edmonton. You guys can go check it out. But we are here to talk about Calgary. So when I say this race is tight, I mean previously I said it was tight, and that's when Jeromy Farkas was at like 30%. And he is basically Nenshi 3.0 because Jyoti Gondek was Nenshi 2.0, which is so sad because he used to be good. He used to be conservative, and he's just decided that all that matters to him is being mayor. So he has put on basically a bodysuit of Naheed Nenshi attempting to become the mayor. Because heck, that guy was mayor 3 elections in a row, and Gondek became mayor. How about I just become like them, and maybe I can be mayor too? But Farkas right now has been basically falling down or stalling out a bit. He is still in the lead, but he's not exactly been gaining ground in the way you would want to. When you're in the lead, you don't just want to stay in the lead, you want to expand that lead. I'm giving Farkas on this chart, rightfully so, a Nenshi purple color here. And Farkas is currently at, according to the Janet Brown poll that just came out, 27%. And then he is followed closely behind by both Sharp and Gondek, who have the same rating of 23%. So this is definitely going to be a close race. And when I go over the undecideds, you'll know exactly what I mean here. So we have 23 for Sharp here. And then I will give Gondek the horrible pink color that she has made for all of her signs. She is tied with Sharp at 23%. But I think it's safe to say that at this point, Gondek can't win. Now, you could think, well, why? If she's tied with Sharp, and you said Sharp is in striking distance of winning. Yes, but she's the incumbent. Everyone and their dog knows who Gondek is. If you're trailing and you are fighting to stay in maybe second place, you're not winning if you're the incumbent. If you're an up and comer and you used to be in many of the polls at 7% behind Jeff Davison, and now you're in second place, only a few points behind the leader, yeah, you can potentially win. And now I'll mark Jeff Davison down here in a light blue because he's kind of pretending to be conservative this time around, even though the man ran basically as a liberal. Previously, Jeff Davison was super liberal on council. When I say that, I mean the man had a 1-to-1 voting record pretty much with Nenshi and Gondek when he was on council between 2017 and 2021. Voted for every tax increase, voted to defund the police, voted against every single measure to try and find wasteful spending in government and cut it. It was a disaster. And he is only at 16%. Now, there are other candidates in this race, and maybe just for the sake of completion, I will write them down on the side here in black. We really don't need to know their names because they are irrelevant. Like, they'll play into potentially who's going to win, but they're not going to be on the bar chart when you're watching the news at night, going back and forth to see who's going to win. But right now, Brian Thiessen is the closest to relevant, and Brian is, I'll just put him at a B. Brian is at 8%. He is running the Calgary Party, who is running a full slate of candidates. The only party that is running a full slate, Sharp has her own team, but they're only running, I think, 10 people, 9 people, whereas Calgary Party is running a full slate, even though, oddly enough, their mayoral candidate is extremely just underwhelming. And then we also have Sarah Elder, who is sitting at only 1%. We have Grant Pryor at 1%. And we also have, who else is even at 1%? I think that's literally it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Grant Pryor, we have Brian Thiessen, and then we have Sarah Elder. Sarah Elder is literally only in this race basically to trip up Farkas, which is kind of funny. But when you actually go for the undecideds, we actually have in this race, you currently have, and this is why the thing is so close. And I want to explain why this doesn't actually mean it's anyone's race, but there's a lot of room left for Sonya Sharp to grow. So when you have undecideds in this race, which I'll just do with the UND, you currently have 34% of people in this poll who do not know who they're voting for. And in fact, the turnout in early voting was minuscule. You can kind of see it right here. I'll just write it on the side. So previously in 2021, and you could say it's COVID, and I think that is probably about a good explanation for why the turnout was it was really high in 2021. But the amount of early ballots that were cast in the 2021 was around, I believe it was 141,000. This time, same amount of early voting time as I'm aware, you had, I believe, 95,000 ballots returned. So we had 141,000 ballots returned last time in a city with a smaller population back then, and now only 95,000 4 years later. That really strikes me as people do not particularly like Gondek or Farkas. Because you could say, well, Farkas is not the incumbent, but Gondek is the incumbent. When turnout is low, typically that's good for an incumbent in an election that they're leading in. The problem is Gondek has basically not been leading for well over a month, and she was only leading before because of name recognition. As Sharp's name recognition has gone up, she's actually been increasing in the polls. Again, going from some of the early Leger polls from just 7% all the way up now to 23%, a massive increase. This is with a lot less decideds, obviously, so everyone's kind of gone up. But in terms of their polling position, you have had Gondek falling over time from first into this kind of second, third state that she's been in a lot of the new polls. Farkas has basically just maintained. Everyone also knows who Farkas is. He kind of has always had about a third of people willing to vote for him, a little less than a third of people willing to vote for him. And that's kind of dangerous when turnout is so low. People had time to know who you were last time. They have had a lot of time to know who you are this time. You served on council, and they're not running out of the house to cast ballots for you. That's a problem, especially when Sharp has a team all over the city who not only are stumping for themselves running for council, but they're also stumping for her. Farkas pretty much has to recreate his campaign in every single ward, whereas Sharp can basically have a citywide mayor campaign at the same time she has all these councilors running around getting votes for themselves and also pushing for her. And in fact, the person who is running for Ward 11 for the community's first slate, who I like a lot, Rob Ward, is easily going to win that one. He almost won it last time. There was just crazy amounts of extra conservative candidates who took just enough votes away from him that he didn't win. That's a real example of vote splitting. He was a robust candidate with a lot of vote, and there was just a couple people taking 1,000 votes here and there. Vote splitting doesn't work when there's like two candidates. that only get 20%. That's just both of them probably were not working very hard, or neither one was the bigger candidate. Vote splitting is like the person's almost there and someone gets like 2% of the vote by like running around telling people, no, I'm the real conservative, even though they're not even attempting to win. And that is Jeromy Farkas's old ward. And Rob Ward is going to win it probably by more than 50%, and he's stumping for Sonya. So you're going to have Farkas doing worse in his old stomping grounds, and then he's going to have to try and make up the vote in other places around the city. Whereas Sonya in her old ward of Ward 1, she has a community's first candidate replacing her who both is campaigning for themselves as well as her. So yeah, I think that right now with polling position, with 34% undecided, this doesn't mean that Gondek can win. Gondek cannot win. And Jeff Davison, I'm sorry to all of his team, Jeff Davison can also not win. Just because you say, well, it's anyone's game, 34% are undecided. Okay, let's literally think of this through. If we double Jeff Davison from 16% to 32% of the raw vote, that would mean that he ended up taking what would even be left here. It would be 18% left to split among these three candidates and some of the other also ran candidates. Do you really think that he is going to almost take half of all the rest of the available vote just to be, what would that be? It would only be 5% higher than what Farkas currently has. So he would have to almost take half of the undecided vote that is left. And then he would have to hope that Farkas doesn't grab up 5% more himself, which ain't that hard because he would only have to have, in this theoretical scenario, less than a third of what he gained from the undecideds in order to finish out the race. Sonya obviously is within 4 points. Again, we are in a race where it affects Gondek more, I guess what you would say, more dramatically. That if you haven't picked her yet, you're probably not going to pick her. But that's also a problem for Farkas. Everyone knows who he is. If you haven't picked him yet, you probably aren't going to pick him. Mostly because you were probably a previous conservative supporter of him, and then he became the candidate with mask-wearing managers and people who are all in favor of blanket rezoning. It was just leaked today that Farkas is on a Discord server of people. It's called More Neighbors, and they're the hyper-densification advocacy group. They believe, we need more neighbors around us. Just densify everywhere because that means there's more property for more people. He is literally bouncing his ideas off of them in their Discord. His ideas off of them. When you're pandering to those people, you should not be mayor. You're not conservative. I've read his website to you guys. Point 25 of his housing plan is that we need housing that makes people from racialized communities, indigenous communities, the 2S LGBTQIA plus community comfortable. It's like, what are you talking about? He wants like a housing first approach to crime. That's not how crime and addiction works. You can't just give someone a house and then hope that they're going to get off of meth because you gave it to them. So Farkas is in the position where if you're one of these 34%, why haven't you jumped on board yet? And if you haven't jumped on board, it's probably because you actually don't really like the 2025 version of him. And I think it's actually fairly realistic that in all this, that a Sonya Sharp could actually grab up that 16% that Davison would want. And that's not even her doubling her vote an unrealistic way, the way Davison would be. She's already at 23. She could potentially grab up 40% of those remaining, especially because the endorsements have been very good. You have had her be able to get federal MPs endorsing her, conservatives like Stephanie Kusi and Shivloy Majumdar. You have had provincial MLAs coming out to endorse her. A lot of people are jumping on board. I even had a good inside lane on the idea. A lot of people who were previously having supported Jeff Davison were jumping over because it's just not going to happen. Not only is he not an actual conservative, he's just pretending to be right now, but clearly you're not going to somehow catch fire now, especially when he's been spending arguably like the most in the first half of the year. He raised the fourth most, which makes sense. He's in fourth place, and he spent the most in the first half of the year. It's been ridiculous how much the man has spent, and I have not noticed any of it. Have you ever watched a movie where it's been talked about how big the budget for it was? and then you go and watch it, and you're like, where was all of that money on screen? I didn't see any of that, like, $200 million they spent. This was crap. The camera work and the editing wasn't even good. That is the Jeff Davison campaign. It is the bloated Hollywood flop. Whereas Sharp is, again, within 4 points, and she could basically take, a third of the vote left. If she could take a third of it left, and then two-thirds kind of more evenly splits with everyone else, I would say if she can take 40% of the remaining, she is in business. And that's not unrealistic because Gondek's not going to get any of the remaining pretty much at this point. Maybe 5%, but that would be at best. Davison is not going to get a lot of the remaining vote because he just can't win, and a lot of people know it, and the endorsements are coming for Sonya. And then Farkas, again, if she can just keep it 40% and Farkas takes a third, she would then beat him. If he got only like 30% of the remaining vote, she got 40, that would be enough to catch him. And again, it's all about turnout, and she is going to have the better turnout game in this election. So anyways, that should be it for me today in this video. But I do want to show you guys one more thing before I close the video out, and that is my endorsement list, just so you guys can see it. I have it on my website. I will be linking it in the description below. I can even just read off all of the endorsements if you guys just want to sit back and wait for your ward to be called. I'm not going to read the rest of Alberta because that would be a bit much. So I have here, Mayor, of course, we are endorsing Sonya Sharp. Council in Ward 1, we are going to endorse the Communities First replacement for Sonya Sharp, who is Kim Tyers. Ward 2, Jennifer Wyness, who's been a generally pretty good councillor. She can be reelected. She'll do things like repeal blanket rezoning with Sonya. Ward 3, I'm endorsing Christy Edwards from the Better Calgary Party. Ward 4, Jeromy Wong from Communities First. Ward 5, the independent Tariq Khan. Ward 6, the independent Joanne Burse. Ward 7, Terry Wong. Ward 8, Cornelia Wiebe, also from Communities First, and Terry Wong is also from it. Ward 9, I'm endorsing the independent Gargar. He is a very good pro-cop candidate. That's basically the big issue I think he's really great on. Ward 10, re-electing Andre Chabot, now running for Communities First. Ward 11, Communities First candidate Rob Ward. Ward 12, a Communities First candidate Shane Bisick. Ward 13, Communities First candidate Dan McLean. Ward 14, candidate Landon Johnson. He is an independent. And then School Board 1 and 2, I say Cindy Dubray. Ward 3 and 4, Joni Liu. Ward 6 and 7, Jennifer Stewart. Ward 8 and 9, Olga Knight. Ward 11 and 13, Tyson Ario. And Ward 12 and 14, Darzouk. But if you vote in Catholic School Board 6 and 8, I say Valerie Dove for. Ward 12 and 13, Steve Chapman. Okay, you've heard all that stuff. I will link that in the description below. If you live in the city of Calgary, please vote. Like, my goodness, if Sonya Sharp doesn't win and Gondek or Farkas somehow beat her by 1% or whatever, even though I think it's more likely to be Farkas if she gets beaten. If you didn't vote, my goodness, you can't complain, because this is the problem. We have a very conservative city in Calgary, but conservatives do not vote. And then they'll wonder, like, oh my goodness, the vote must have been rigged. It's like, no, you didn't vote. Like, I love it when people say, oh my goodness, Gondek won. Must have been a voting machine thing. No one voted. Of course she won. Only 40% of people voted, and it was all the union people. It was like maybe 15% of the turnout was actual conservatives, and then the rest of the 85% was like moderates and progressives. Of course she won, and the entire progressive slate won. Oh. Anyway, so make sure you vote. That's basically the thesis of this video. If you don't know who I'm endorsing and you want to check out my other ones, if you're in Medicine Hat or Edmonton, Airdrie, Cochrane, Red Deer, check out the link, go look at it, and I will see you guys all